The morning sun rose slowly over Haven's Rest colony, painting the red dirt and metal buildings in warm golden light. Jake Morrison stood at his office window, watching his 7-year-old daughter Amy play with the other children in the small playground near the main building. Her laughter mixed with the sounds of the mining equipment in the distance, creating the familiar music of their quiet life on this distant world. Jake had been the colony administrator for 5 years now. He loved this job and this place. Haven's Rest was home to 847 people who had chosen to leave Earth behind and build something new together. They were miners, engineers, doctors, teachers, and farmers. Simple people who wanted a peaceful life. Among the stars, the planet Kepler 442c was not beautiful like Earth. The ground was mostly red rock and dust. The air was thin, so everyone had to wear breathing masks when they went outside. But the minerals buried deep in this world were worth more than gold. The rare elements they dug up would help build better spaceships and computers back on Earth. Lisa Blake, the colony's chief engineer, knocked on Jake's office door. She was a smart woman in her 30s who could fix anything that broke. The colonists trusted her to keep their machines running and their homes warm. "Jake, we have a problem with the Eastern Mining Station," Lisa said. The main drill broke down again. "I need to take a team out there this afternoon." Jake nodded. "Take Danny with you. I don't like people going out to the remote stations alone." Danny Carter was their security chief. He was a former Earth military man who had come to Haven's Rest looking for a quiet retirement. He spent most of his time checking the colony's simple defenses and teaching the younger men how to use the hunting rifles they kept for protection against the local wildlife. The colony had 12 security officers, but they were not real soldiers. They were just regular people who had learned to shoot straight and keep watch. Haven's Rest had never faced any real danger. The planet was far from the trade routes where space pirates operated. No alien species had ever shown interest in this empty part of the galaxy. Dr. Helen Ford ran the colony's small hospital. She was a kind woman who had delivered Amy Morrison and helped raise most of the children on Haven's Rest. She treated everything from broken bones to space sickness with equal care and gentle words. At lunchtime, Jake ate with Amy in the colony's main dining hall. The big room was full of families sharing meals and talking about their day. Children ran between the tables while their parents discussed work schedules and weekend plans. It felt safe and normal, like a small town on Earth. "Daddy, can we go see the new baby animals at the farm after you finish work?" Amy asked. Her big brown eyes looked up at him with hope. "Of course, sweetheart. Mr. Peterson said the goats had babies last week. We can bring them some treats." Amy smiled and went back to eating her soup. Jake watched her and felt the deep happiness that came from knowing his daughter was growing up in a place where she could run and play without fear. On Earth, cities were crowded and dangerous. Here on Haven's Rest, every adult looked out for every child. The afternoon passed quietly. Jake worked on supply reports while Amy attended her classes with the other children. Their teacher, Mrs. Collins, was showing them how to grow vegetables in the colony's greenhouse. Learning to make food grow in alien soil was an important skill for people living so far from Earth. At 4 o'clock, the colony's alarm system started screaming. Jake jumped up from his desk and ran to the communication center. The big screen showed space around their planet, and what he saw made his blood turn cold. Dozens of large alien ships were dropping out of hyperspace, surrounding Kepler 442c like hunters circling prey. Danny Carter's voice crackled over the radio. "Jake, we've got big trouble. Those are Zephyrian Empire warships. Military class. I count at least 40 vessels." Jake's hands shook as he activated the colony-wide emergency system. His voice echoed from speakers in every building. "All colonists report to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Move quickly but stay calm. Help your neighbors. and look after the children. The Zephyrians were reptile-like aliens who ruled a large empire in this part of the galaxy. Jake had read reports about them, but Haven's Rest was supposed to be too small and remote to attract their attention. The Zephyrians were slave traders who captured humans to work in their mines and factories. Lisa Blake ran into the command center, her face pale with fear. "Jake, they're jamming our long-range communications." "We can't call for help." Jake felt his heart sink. The nearest Earth military base was 6 months away by the fastest ship. Even if they could send a message, help would not arrive in time, outside. Parents were gathering their children and moving toward the underground shelters. The colony had been built with emergency bunkers in case of meteor strikes or equipment failures. The shelters could hold everyone for several weeks, but they were not designed to protect against military attack. Dr. Ford's voice came over the radio. "Jake, I'm seeing panic injuries in Shelter 3. Some of the older people are having heart problems from the stress. I need to move between shelters to help them. Helen, stay where you are. It's too dangerous to move around now." The alien fleet completed its deployment around the planet. Jake could see the massive ships on his screen, each one larger than the entire Haven's Rest colony. Their dark metal hulls were covered with weapon systems that could level cities. A new voice filled the air, speaking English with a harsh, hissing accent. "Humans of this world, you are now prisoners of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender immediately and prepare for transport to processing centers. Any resistance will result in death." Jake grabbed the radio microphone with shaking hands. "This is Administrator Jake Morrison of Haven's Rest Colony. We are peaceful miners with families and children. We have no weapons or military value. Please, leave us alone." The alien voice laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your species makes excellent slaves, human. Your children will be raised to serve the Empire. Adult males will work in the deep mines. Females will serve in other capacities. You have 1 hour to gather in your main plaza, or we will begin bombardment." Jake closed his eyes and tried to think. 847 people depended on him to make the right choice. The colony had hunting rifles and mining explosives, but nothing that could fight military starships. If they surrendered, the adults might survive as slaves, but the children would be taken away and raised as alien property. If they fought, everyone would die, but maybe someone could escape to warn Earth. Amy's voice came from behind him. "Daddy, I'm scared. Why are the bad aliens here?" Jake turned and saw his daughter standing in the doorway, holding her favorite stuffed animal. Her teacher, Mrs. Collins, stood beside her with tears in her eyes. "Amy, you need to go to the shelter with Mrs. Collins. Daddy has to take care of some important business." "I want to stay with you, Daddy." Jake knelt down and hugged his daughter tight. "I know, sweetheart, but the shelter is safer. I promise I'll come find you as soon as I can." Mrs. Collins took Amy's hand. "Come on, honey. Let's go read stories with the other children until your daddy finishes his work." As they walked away, Jake made his decision. He would not let the Zephyrians take the children without a fight. Even if Haven's Rest could not win, they could make the aliens pay a price. And maybe, somehow, they could get a message to Earth about what happened here. The bombardment began 30 minutes later. Plasma fire from the alien ships lit up the sky like deadly fireworks, targeting the colony's power station and communication towers. The ground shook with each explosion, and Jake knew their peaceful life on Haven's Rest was ending forever. The small message pod drifted through space for 3 weeks after escaping Haven's Rest. It was no larger than a basketball, but it carried the most important message in human history. Inside its memory banks were Jake Morrison's final words, and 8-year-old Amy's terrified testimony about watching her father die to save her life. Admiral Kevin Ross sat in his office on Luna Station, reading reports from across human space. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes who had spent 30 years protecting humanity from the dangers of the galaxy. His job was to keep Earth and its colonies safe from pirates, alien raiders, and the endless small conflicts that happened. Between the stars, the message pod's arrival alert beeped on his computer. Automated distress signals came in every day from ships with broken engines or colonies requesting supplies. Kevin almost ignored this one, but something made him open the file. The recording began with Jake Morrison's voice, calm but scared. "This is Colony Administrator Jake Morrison of Haven's Rest. If you're hearing this, we're probably all dead. The Zephyrian Empire attacked us without warning. They want to take our people as slaves, especially the children." Kevin sat forward in his chair. The Zephyrians were known slave traders, but they usually stayed in their own territory. Haven's Rest was far from the Empire's normal hunting grounds. Jake's voice continued. "We can't fight them. We're just miners and farmers. But we won't let them take our children without a fight. I'm sending this message so Earth knows what happened here. Tell our families we tried to protect each other." The recording switched to Amy Morrison's small, shaking voice. "My daddy saved me from the bad lizard men. He fell down and there was lots of blood. The doctor lady said Daddy went to sleep forever. The lizard men hurt everyone. They broke our homes and took people away in cages." Kevin's hands clenched into fists as he listened to the child's story. Amy described watching Zephyrian soldiers drag her neighbors from their homes. She talked about the burning buildings and the screams of other children calling for their parents. "They put the grown-ups in big metal boxes," Amy's voice whispered. "Mrs. Collins said they were taking us to a bad place where we'd never see our families again. But Daddy stopped them from getting me. He was very brave." The recording ended with technical data from the colony's sensors showing the size and strength of the Zephyrian attack fleet. Kevin stared at the numbers in disbelief. The aliens had sent over 40 warships to capture a peaceful mining colony. It was like using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. Kevin immediately called President Maria Santos on Earth. She was a strong woman who had led humanity through several crises. But Kevin could hear the shock in her voice when he told her about Haven's Rest. 847 people, she said quietly, including 127 children, all gone. The survivors are probably in Zephyrian slave camps by now, Kevin replied. We need to respond to this, Maria. The galaxy needs to know that attacking human civilians has consequences. Within hours, the recording was being broadcast across human space. On Mars, factory worker Tony Garcia watched his 6-year-old daughter sleep in her bed and felt a cold rage building in his chest. He had never wanted to be a soldier, but now he walked to the military recruitment office and signed up for the Terran Defense Fleet. On Europa Station, scientist Karen White stopped her research on asteroid mining to stare at the footage of Haven's Rest burning. She had always believed her work was more important than military service. Now she realized that science meant nothing if children were not safe to grow up and learn. The alien consortium sent Ambassador Veltar to Earth within 48 hours. The insect-like diplomat represented 12 different alien species who worked together to keep peace in the galaxy. Veltar had 6 legs, compound eyes, and a translator device that made his voice sound like buzzing bees. The consortium is deeply concerned about human military movements, Veltar told President Santos in the White House. We understand your grief over the Haven's Rest incident, but revenge will only lead to more violence. President Santos looked at the alien ambassador with cold eyes. Incident? Is that what you call the murder of 127 children? The Zephyrian Empire has been contacted about this unfortunate event. They claim the colony was used as a military base and that resistance was met with appropriate force. Appropriate force. President Santos stood up from her desk. They sent 40 warships against miners with hunting rifles. They captured children to sell as slaves. If that's appropriate to you, then we have nothing more to discuss. Veltar's translator buzzed nervously. Madam President, military action against the Zephyrian Empire could destabilize the entire sector. The consortium urges restraint and peaceful negotiation. The time for negotiation ended when Jake Morrison died protecting his daughter. You have 24 hours to leave Earth, Ambassador. After that, any alien ship near human space will be considered hostile. Veltar left Earth that same day, but not before sending urgent messages to every government in the consortium. The aliens were learning that humans were different from other species. Most civilized races would mourn their dead and then accept compensation or apologies. Humans seemed to be preparing for something much more serious. In the deep levels of Luna Station, Admiral Ross activated Protocol 7. The classified document had been written after humanity's first contact with hostile aliens. It was designed for one terrible purpose: the complete destruction of any species that deliberately targeted human children. Dr. Angela Phillips received the call at her laboratory on Titan. She was the lead scientist for the Terran Weapons Division, responsible for developing humanity's most advanced military technology. Most of her work was theoretical, creating weapons that were too dangerous to actually build. "Angela, I need everything," Admiral Ross told her over the secure communication link. "Every weapon design, every theoretical project, every nightmare scenario ever imagined. The budget is unlimited." "Kevin, what's happened? The last time we talked about Protocol 7, you said it would never be used. That was before they started taking our children. How long do you need?" Dr. Phillips looked at her research files. Years of work on weapons that could crack planets and boil away atmospheres. 6 months. Maybe less if I can get the resources. You'll have them. Every factory, every research station, every military base is now under your command. Build me a fleet that can make the Zephyrians extinct. Across human space, the transformation began immediately. Civilian shipyards stopped building cargo vessels and started producing warships. Mining stations redirected their operations to extract materials for weapons manufacturing. Universities canceled regular classes and focused on military research. Change was visible from space. Earth's orbital factories, once peaceful centers of commerce, now glowed with the constant work of war production. Transport ships moved between worlds, carrying weapons components and military supplies instead of trade goods. Captain Ryan Lewis reported to the Proxima Station shipyard to take command of his new vessel. The battleship Vengeance was one of 300 identical ships being built using Dr. Phillips' new designs. The ship was longer than 3 city blocks and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "She's beautiful," said Lieutenant Commander Beth Turner, Lewis's second-in-command. "I've never seen weapons like these before." "The technical specifications are classified," Lewis replied. "But I've been told these ships can do things that violate the laws of physics." Young Ensign Chris Johnson joined the crew that same day. His family had died in a Zephyrian raid on a mining station near the edge of human space. He was only 19 years old, but his eyes held the same cold determination that was spreading through the human military. "Sir, when do we start hunting?" Chris asked. Captain Lewis looked at the young man and saw the future of humanity. "Soon, Ensign." "Very soon." The aliens in the consortium watched humanity's military buildup with growing fear. Intelligence reports showed weapon systems that seemed impossible, ships being built at an incredible pace, and a human population united in their desire for revenge. Ambassador Veltar sent desperate messages to every species in the galaxy. "The humans are not responding to diplomatic contact. They appear to be preparing for total war against the Zephyrian Empire. We strongly recommend that all civilized species maintain distance from human space until this crisis is resolved." But it was too late for warnings. Humanity had made its decision. The galaxy was about to learn why taking human children was the worst mistake the Zephyrians could have made. 6 months after the Haven's Rest massacre, human space had transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. Every world, every station, every ship worked together with one purpose: preparing for war against the Zephyrian Empire. Captain Ryan Lewis stood on the bridge of the battleship Vengeance, watching hundreds of other warships gather at Proxima Station. The massive military base had grown from a small outpost into the largest fleet assembly point in human history. Ships arrived every day from Earth, Mars, Europa, and dozens of colony worlds. The Vengeance was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Her hull was painted black with silver markings that looked like lightning bolts. The ship stretched over a kilometer from bow to stern, packed with weapons that most of the crew did not fully understand. Dr. Phillips had designed these ships using science that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Lieutenant Commander Beth Turner approached Lewis at his command station. She was a veteran officer who had served on patrol ships before the war began. Now she was learning to operate weapon systems that could destroy entire fleets. "Captain, the final weapon systems came online this morning," she reported. "Chief Engineer Martinez says the quantum disruptors are functioning within normal parameters, whatever that means." Lewis nodded grimly. The technical manuals for their new weapons were classified so highly that only senior officers could read them. Even then, the science was so advanced that few people really understood how the devices worked. They just knew that when fired, these weapons could do things that seemed impossible. Ensign Chris Johnson worked at the navigation station, plotting courses through space that would take the fleet to Zephyrian territory. He was still young, but 6 months of intensive training had turned him into a skilled officer. The death of his family had given him a focus that impressed his superiors. "Sir, Admiral Ross is broadcasting from the flagship," Johnson announced. The main screen showed Admiral Ross standing on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Retribution. Behind him, officers worked at stations controlling the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built. The Admiral looked older than he had 6 months ago, but his eyes burned with cold determination. "Officers and crew of the Terran Defense Fleet," Ross began, "today we depart for Zephyrian space to deliver justice for Haven's Rest. We carry with us the hopes of every human child who should never have to fear alien slavers." On screens throughout the fleet, the Admiral showed footage of Jake Morrison's final moments. The recording never failed to anger the human crews. They watched their fellow human die protecting his daughter, and they remembered why they were here. "The Zephyrians believe they can take our children and face no consequences," Ross continued. "They think humans are weak because we prefer peace to war. Today they learn the difference between choosing peace and being unable to fight." Dr. Angela Phillips had spent the last 6 months turning theoretical weapons into reality. Her laboratories on Titan, Ganymede, and the asteroid belt worked around the clock to produce devices that violated several laws of physics. The Judgment Protocol weapons were her masterpiece, built from science that most alien species would consider impossible. The quantum disruptors could unmake the bonds between atoms, causing enemy ships to simply fall apart at the molecular level. Gravity bombs created artificial black holes that lasted just long enough to crush anything nearby. Planet killer missiles carried antimatter warheads powerful enough to crack continental plates. These weapons are beyond anything the galaxy has seen before, Phillips explained to Admiral Ross during their final briefing. "The Zephyrians have good shields and armor, but our new technology works on fundamental forces. Their defenses will be useless." The fleet that assembled at Proxima Station included 837 warships of various sizes. The core battle group consisted of 300 Vengeance-class battleships, each one capable of fighting an entire alien fleet alone. 50 dreadnoughts like the Retribution provided heavy firepower and command facilities. Supporting vessels included fast attack cruisers, troop transports, supply ships, and specialized weapon platforms. The entire fleet carried enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds, and every weapon was focused on one goal: making the Zephyrian Empire pay. For taking human children, Tony Garcia had left his factory job on Mars to serve aboard the cruiser Justice. He worked in the engine room, maintaining the powerful reactors that fed the ship's weapons. Every day he looked at a picture of his daughter and remembered why he was here. "The aliens think they can treat us like animals," he told his shipmate. During their rest period, they're about to learn that humans are the most dangerous predators in the galaxy when someone threatens our young. Karen White had joined the fleet as a science officer aboard the battleship Retribution. Her research on asteroid mining had been converted into techniques for cracking enemy armor. She had never imagined her peaceful work would be used for war. But the death of Haven's Rest children had changed her perspective on everything. Across human space, families gathered to watch the fleet departure on their communication screens. Parents held their children close and explained that brave people were going to make sure the bad aliens could never hurt human families again. Amy Morrison, now 8 years old, watched from her new home on Earth. The Morrison family had adopted her after Haven's Rest, giving her the love and safety her father had died to protect. She did not fully understand the politics of war, but she knew the big ships were going to fight the lizard men who had killed her daddy. The alien consortium sent increasingly desperate messages to human leaders, begging them to reconsider their military action. Ambassador Veltar warned that the weapons humanity was deploying could destabilize entire star systems and threaten civilian populations throughout the sector. President Santos responded to the consortium with a simple message: the Zephyrian Empire had the opportunity to treat human civilians with respect. They chose to enslave our children instead. Now they will face the consequences of that choice. Intelligence reports reached the consortium about humanity's new weapons technology. Alien scientists studied the data and declared it impossible. Quantum disruptors violated the basic laws of physics. Gravity bombs should not be able to exist in stable form. Planet-killer missiles carried more destructive power than most species could produce in a year. The humans have developed weapons that our best theorists say cannot work, reported the consortium's chief scientist. Yet our intelligence sources confirm these devices exist and function exactly as described. We may have underestimated human scientific capabilities. The Zephyrian Empire initially dismissed reports of the human military buildup. Emperor Siltar believed his species' superior technology would easily defeat any human attack. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved hundreds of species over the centuries. They saw humans as just another primitive race to exploit. Admiral Krexthul commanded the Zephyrian defensive fleet with 400 of the Empire's best warships. His vessels used advanced energy shields and plasma weapons that had dominated galactic warfare for generations. He was confident that human technology could not match Zephyrian military science. "Let the humans come," Krexthul told his officers. "We will crush their primitive fleet and take more slaves for the Empire. Their children will serve our civilization for generations." The Zephyrian admiral had no idea what was coming toward his forces. Human ships approached the border carrying weapons that operated on principles his scientists did not understand. The quantum physics that powered humanity's new technology was centuries ahead of anything the Empire had developed. As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Admiral Ross sent one final message to Earth: "We go now to deliver humanity's judgment on those who harm our children. We will not return until every human taken by the Zephyrians is free, and until the galaxy understands that our young are protected by forces beyond their comprehension." The massive fleet engaged their hyperspace drives simultaneously, creating a tear in spacetime that was visible from several star systems away. 837 human warships vanished into the darkness between stars, carrying with then the concentrated fury of an entire species. The journey to Zephyrian space would take 2 weeks. When they arrived, the galaxy would witness the birth of a new kind of warfare, powered by human rage and scientific genius that transformed grief into weapons of unimaginable destruction. Behind them, human space continued its war production, building more ships and weapons in case the first fleet was not enough, but everyone knew it would be enough. The Zephyrians had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping since the species first looked up at the stars and dreamed of peace. Now they would deliver war beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Helix Prime system like a swarm of angry hornets. Captain Ryan Lewis watched his tactical display as 837 human warships took their positions in perfect formation. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. "Contact, sir," reported Ensign Chris Johnson from his station. "Zephyrian fleet bearing 27 Mark IV. One count 412 vessels." Lewis studied the enemy formation through his ship's sensors. The Zephyrian ships were impressive, with sleek hulls that gleamed like polished metal and weapon arrays that had conquered dozens of worlds. Admiral Krexthul had positioned his fleet in a defensive wall designed to protect the inner system. "They're bigger than our intelligence reports suggested," observed Lieutenant Commander Beth Turner. "Some of those dreadnoughts are twice the size of our largest ships." Lewis nodded grimly. The Zephyrians had ruled this part of the galaxy for centuries through superior technology and overwhelming firepower. Their ships carried plasma cannons that could melt through most known armor, and their shields had turned back every attack for generations. Admiral Ross's voice echoed through the fleet communication system from his flagship, Retribution. "All ships, this is Admiral Ross. Today we avenge Haven's Rest and every human child taken by these creatures. Remember Jake Morrison. Remember why we're here." The Zephyrian Admiral Krexthul opened a communication channel to the human fleet. His reptilian face appeared on screens throughout the human ships, showing scales that glittered like green metal and eyes that glowed with cold intelligence. "Human Admiral, you have made a serious mistake coming here," Krexthul hissed through his translator. "Your primitive technology cannot match the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Admiral Ross appeared on the main screen of his flagship bridge. His gray hair and lined face showed the weight of command, but his eyes burned with absolute determination. "Admiral Krexthul, you murdered 847 innocent humans, including 127 children. Today you pay for that crime." "Children make excellent slaves when properly trained," Krexthul replied with what might have been a laugh. "Your species breeds quickly. We will take more from your other colonies after we destroy your fleet." The communication ended, and both fleets began moving toward each other across the dark space between planets. The Zephyrian ships advanced in their traditional battle formation, confident that their proven tactics would overwhelm the humans just as they had defeated every other enemy. The battle began at maximum weapons range, with traditional energy beams and missile attacks. Zephyrian plasma cannons fired brilliant green bolts of superheated gas that could vaporize armor plating. Their targeting systems were precise, and several human ships took heavy damage in the opening exchange. Captain Lewis felt the vengeance shake as enemy fire struck their shields. "Damage report," he called out. "Forward shields down to 60%, reported Chief Engineer Martinez. "They're hitting us harder than expected, sir." Around them, other human ships were taking punishment from the alien weapons. The destroyer. Courage exploded in a ball of fire as a Zephyrian dreadnought's main guns overwhelmed its defenses. The cruiser Honor lost its port weapon array to a plasma torpedo strike. "Sir, they're breaking through our defensive lines," warned Turner. "At this rate, we'll lose a quarter of the fleet before we can close to effective range." Lewis watched the tactical display and saw the truth in her words. The Zephyrians were winning the traditional space battle, just as they had won countless others. Their technology was superior, their tactics were proven, and their confidence was growing with each human ship they damaged. Then Admiral Ross gave the order that changed galactic history forever. All ships, activate Judgment Protocol weapons. Show them what humanity can do when they threaten our children. Captain Lewis pressed the activation switch that Dr. Phillips had installed on every human ship. Across the fleet, weapons that violated the known laws of physics came online for the first time in actual combat. The quantum disruptors fired first. Instead of energy beams or physical projectiles, they launched waves of altered reality that struck the Zephyrian ships and began unmaking them at the molecular level. The alien vessels did not explode or catch fire. They simply started falling apart as the bonds between their atoms ceased to exist. "What are they doing to us?" screamed a Zephyrian captain over the open communication channels. His ship was dissolving like salt in water, piece by piece disappearing into cosmic dust. The gravity bombs were even more terrifying. Human ships launched devices no larger than torpedoes that created artificial black holes when they reached their targets. The miniature singularities lasted only seconds, but that was long enough to crush enemy vessels into balls of compressed metal. Admiral Krexthul watched in horror as his fleet began disappearing around him. Zephyrian ships that had conquered worlds for centuries were being destroyed by weapons that his scientists said could not exist. His shields were useless against attacks that worked on fundamental forces. "All ships, retreat to defensive positions around the homeworld," Krexthul ordered. "Emergency hyperspace jump, immediate execution." But the humans were not finished. Dr. Phillips had designed the planet-killer missiles specifically for this moment. As the surviving Zephyrian ships tried to flee, human vessels launched antimatter warheads that moved faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. The missiles caught the retreating fleet halfway to the system's edge. Each warhead carried enough antimatter to crack a moon, and when they detonated among the tightly packed alien ships, the explosions were visible from neighboring star systems. In 15 minutes, the Zephyrian defensive fleet ceased to exist. 412 warships that had terrorized the galaxy for generations were reduced to glowing debris scattered across space. Only Admiral Krexthul's flagship escaped, jumping to hyperspace with damage that left it barely functional. Captain Lewis stared at his tactical display in amazement. The human fleet had lost only 17 ships, mostly to the initial Zephyrian assault before the new weapons came online. The aliens had been completely destroyed by technology they could not understand or defend against. "Sir, Admiral Ross is broadcasting to the entire galaxy," announced Johnson. Ross's voice carried across space on all frequencies, reaching every alien communication system within 50 light years. "This is Admiral Kevin Ross of the Terran Defense Fleet. Any species that harms human children will face complete extinction. This is not a threat. This is a promise carved in the bones of Haven's Rest." The message included full recording of the battle, showing human weapons that made reality itself into a weapon. Alien intelligence services throughout the galaxy received the transmission and began emergency meetings to discuss its implications. The human fleet proceeded toward the Zephyrian homeworld of Drakmor Prime, moving at a steady pace that allowed the aliens time to understand what was coming. The planet was the heart of the Empire, home to 12 billion reptilian civilians and the strongest defensive systems in Zephyrian space. Dr. Phillips activated her masterpiece aboard the flagship Retribution. The atmospheric processor was a device that could convert any planet's air into a mixture toxic to specific species. It was the ultimate weapon of extinction, designed to kill every member of a targeted race while leaving their world intact for others to inhabit. "Atmospheric conversion beginning," Phillips reported to Admiral Ross. "The process will take 72 hours to complete. All reptilian life on the planet will die unless they surrender unconditionally." Emperor Siltar received the human ultimatum in his palace on Drakmor Prime. The message was simple and terrifying. Release all human slaves immediately and surrender. The Empire, or watch his entire species die in 3 days. This is impossible, Siltar told his advisors. No species has weapons that can kill a planet's entire population. The humans are bluffing. But as reports came in from across the Empire, the Emperor learned that humanity was not bluffing. Human fleets were appearing at Zephian colonies throughout the sector, carrying the same impossible weapons and delivering the same ultimatum. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the most powerful empire in the region faced extinction from a species they had considered primitive. Intelligence agencies scrambled to understand how humans had developed technology that violated basic scientific principles. On Drakmor Prime, the first signs of atmospheric poisoning began appearing as the human device slowly converted the planet's air into a mixture that would kill every Zephyrian who breathed it. The Emperor had less than 3 days to decide between surrender and the death of his entire civilization. The age of Zephyrian dominance was ending, replaced by something the galaxy had never seen before. Human fury transformed into weapons that made extinct species out of child killers. Emperor Siltar knelt on the cold metal floor of Admiral Ross's command room aboard the battleship Retribution. The reptilian ruler's golden crown lay broken beside him, and his ceremonial robes were torn and stained. Around him, the bodies of his military advisors who had chosen death over surrender lay silent. Admiral Ross stood before the fallen emperor, flanked by Marines including Sergeant Pete Collins and Corporal Sandy Martinez. The Admiral's gray hair and lined face showed the weight of command, but his eyes held no mercy for the creature who had ordered the enslavement of human children. "You wanted to see me beg," Siltar hissed through his translator. His voice shook with fear and rage. "I offer you tribute, territory, slaves, my empire's wealth beyond imagination. Spare my people, and the Zephyrian Empire will serve humanity forever." Ross looked down at the alien emperor without emotion. Behind him, a large screen showed footage from Haven's Rest 6 months ago. Jake Morrison shielded his daughter Amy with his own body as Zephyrian plasma fire burned through his chest. The recording played the sound of children screaming as alien soldiers dragged them from their homes. "You want mercy?" Ross asked quietly. "Jake Morrison showed you mercy when he died quickly instead of making you suffer for hours like your soldiers did to our children." The Admiral gestured to Lieutenant Commander Beth Turner, who activated another recording. This one showed Zephyrian slave camps where human children worked in dark mines, their small hands bleeding from handling sharp rocks. Other footage revealed human families locked in metal cages, waiting to be sold to different alien buyers. "We found 17 slave camps in your territory," Ross continued. 3,412 humans, including 896 children. Some of them have been your prisoners for years. Some were babies when you took them. Siltar's scaled face twisted with desperate fear. The atmospheric poisoning device continued its work on his homeworld below. His people had less than 18 hours before their planet's air became deadly to all reptilian life. "The Consortium will stop you," the Emperor whispered. "They cannot allow one species to exterminate another. The other aliens will unite against humanity to prevent this precedent." Ross smiled coldly. "The Consortium already tried to negotiate with us. Ambassador Veltar came to Earth with threats and warnings. President Santos gave him 24 hours to leave. He took 12. Captain Ryan Lewis entered the command room with a datapad containing the surrender terms. His ship, the Vengeance, was one of hundreds of human vessels surrounding the Zephian homeworld. Every ship carried weapons that could kill planets, and every crew member remembered watching the footage of Haven's Rest. "The terms are simple," Ross told the kneeling Emperor. "The Zephyrian Empire ceases to exist immediately. All military forces disband permanently. Your species will spend the next century in supervised rehabilitation, learning the value of the lives you destroyed. Lewis read from the surrender document. All human slaves will be released and returned to their families. Any Zephyrian found harming a human civilian after today will result in the immediate extinction of your entire species. Your worlds will be governed by human administrators until we decide you can be trusted. The Emperor's translator buzzed with static as he struggled to speak. My people will never accept this. They will resist. They will fight. No, they won't, Ross replied. He activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting his voice to every Zephyrian on the planet below. This is Admiral Kevin Ross. Your Emperor has 3 choices. He can sign the surrender documents and save your species. He can refuse and watch all of you die in the next 18 hours. Or he can try to lie to us and discover what our other weapons can do. On the planet's surface, 12 billion Zephyrians watched their sky growing darker as the atmospheric processor continued its deadly work. The device was converting their breathable air into a mixture that would kill every reptilian lung on the planet. They could already smell the change in the wind. Dr. Angela Phillips monitored the atmospheric conversion from her station on the Retribution. Her months of theoretical work had become the weapon that would either save or doom an entire species. The science that powered the device was beyond anything the Zephyrians could understand or counter. Atmospheric toxicity now at 40%, Phillips reported. At current rate of conversion, the air will become lethal to reptilian life in 17 hours and 36 minutes. Emperor Siltar looked at the surrender documents with shaking hands. The terms were absolute and humiliating, but they offered survival for his species. The alternative was extinction within hours. If I sign this, how do I know you will stop the atmospheric poisoning? He asked. Because we keep our promises, Ross answered. When we said we would come for you, we came. When we said we would make you pay, you paid. When we promise mercy for surrender, we will keep that promise too. The Emperor picked up the electronic stylus with trembling claws and signed the documents. The moment his signature appeared on the screen, Ross sent a signal to Dr. Phillips. The atmospheric processor shut down immediately, halting the conversion with hours to spare. Across the galaxy, the news of Zephyrian surrender spread faster than hyperspace travel. The most powerful empire in the sector had been crushed in less than a week by weapons that violated every known law of physics. Alien governments held emergency meetings to discuss the implications. Ambassador Veltar returned to the consortium assembly with footage of human weapons that his species' best scientists declared impossible. The recording showed quantum disruptors unmaking matter at the molecular level, gravity bombs creating artificial black holes, and atmospheric processors that could kill entire worlds. The humans have become something new, Veltar reported to the assembly of 12 alien species. Their technology operates on principles we do not understand. Their military power exceeds anything we have seen in galactic history. President Maria Santos addressed the Galactic Council for the first time via holographic transmission. Behind her image, the entire human battle fleet maintained position just outside the Council station, their weapons trained on any ship that might threaten the meeting. Humanity asks for nothing but the safety of our children, Santos said simply. Guarantee that, and we will be the most peaceful species in the galaxy. Threaten that, and we will be your extinction. The galaxy's power structure shifted overnight. Trade routes adjusted to avoid conflict with human interests. Military buildups halted as alien species recalculated the cost of war with humanity. Several smaller empires immediately signed peace treaties with Earth, offering tribute and friendship. The consortium officially recognized humanity's special protection doctrine, granting humans the right to respond with unlimited force to any attack on their civilians. The document was signed by every member species within 72 hours, driven by fear of what humanity might do if refused. On Earth, Amy Morrison planted a small tree in the memorial garden dedicated to her father and the other victims of Haven's Rest. She was now 8 years old and living safely with her adoptive family, protected by the promise that no one would ever harm human children again. The memorial plaque was simple and direct: Jake Morrison and the 847 souls of Haven's Rest. They fell protecting tomorrow. Humanity ensured they did not fall in vain. Tony Garcia returned to Mars to see his daughter after serving aboard the cruiser Justice. She ran into his arms at the spaceport, and he held her tight while remembering the children who would never see their parents again. The war was over, but the memory of why it was fought would never fade. Dr. Phillips deactivated the last of the planet killer weapons, storing them in secure facilities where they would wait in case humanity ever needed them again. She hoped they would never be used, but she knew they would always exist as a promise and a warning. Captain Lewis took the Vengeance on patrol along the new borders of human space, where his ship served as both protector and reminder. Any alien vessel that approached human territory was politely but firmly informed of the consequences of hostile action. In the depths of space, human patrol ships maintained their eternal watch, carrying weapons that could end civilizations, and the absolute certainty that they would use them if necessary. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson about humanity. They were peaceful until their children were threatened, and then they became something else entirely. The age of human dominance began not with conquest, but with the simple promise that no child would ever die alone and afraid while humanity existed to protect them. It was a promise written in starfire and sealed with the ashes of those who had dared to test it. Across human space, children slept safely in their beds, knowing that their parents and their species would move heaven and earth to keep them safe. And in the darkness between stars, human ships waited with patient vigilance, ready to deliver judgment and flame to anyone foolish enough to threaten the future of humanity.